Joe and Doug,
Do you have a quorum?
with you, we got a quorum, right? No. Yes, I'm taking care of Dan's place, so.
All right.
Oh,
All right. Let's call this meeting to order. Okay, let it show that Joe is excused. Doug isn't here right now, but I'm sure he'll be showing up, huh? We need a motion to approve the agenda. There's one change on the agenda, and that is the date down in the bottom where it says November 14th should be November 11th. Tracy had a problem coming in on Saturday, so I told her we'll move it to Wednesday instead. So motion by
I make a
Doak
motion, yeah,
to approve.
with that change.
Second, please.
I second.
Gary, Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Uh, you got a copy of the minutes. Debbie sent out a copy. I sent out a copy. Uh, Debbie's copy had a couple of changes. Mine came as a formatted copy, and so the formatted copy actually is got the correct date. It's got the changes were made in there, but so what we need to do is just approve the corrected minutes.
Yours has the changes
Yeah,
where you've changed some spelling in that.
right.
Make a motion to approve those amended minutes.
Okay. Approved motion made by Doak. A second, please.
I'll
And
second
by
it.
Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Uh, no one here from the public. Gary's here, but you're part of this. So, um, you're up, Tracy.
Before I start, I just wanted to talk about the mitigation section of what emergency management does. So, mitigation efforts attempt to prevent hazards from developing into disasters altogether or to reduce the effects of disasters when they occur. The mitigation phase differs from the other phases because it focuses on long-term measures for reducing or eliminating risk. So again, just wanted to point that out that that is one of the sections that emergency management does. The first part is review the 2020 budget to date. Did anyone have any questions on the budget? Okay.
I just had 4 areas that you're behind on revenue. On
Okay.
the emergency government, EMPG, the nuke plant reimbursement, Sarah, and the computer hazmat grant.
I can answer all those. So the EMPG, I get refunded once a year or reimbursed once a year, and that will be sometime after October 30th or 31st when I have to have all the financials to the state. And they have, I believe, 60 days roughly to get that. And that applies also to the EPCRA funds. That closes financially the end of October. Once that gets submitted, then we work at the reimbursement. Nuke plant, once a quarter, I send a invoice to them. They have 45 days from when they receive my last quarter bill to reimburse us, so that is where that's at.
So you're always 3 months behind on reimbursement on that one.
Roughly, yep. And then the computer hazmat grant, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago is when they finally opened it up saying that our grant was approved and now we can spend that. So once I get everything purchased, I will then apply for reimbursement.
Did you talk, Sarah?
Oh, sorry, yes, that's EPCRA also. That's the same thing, Sarah and EPCRA.
Okay. Are those going to get caught up by the end of the year, or are those going to lag the end of the?
So my fiscal year goes from October 1st through September 30th for those 2 grants you're talking about. So once I close out, as long as there's no disasters in Wisconsin that would prohibit the state from being able to get those out in a timely manner, it is with any hope that they are here by the end of this year. But keep in mind that that reimbursement starts October from last year. So I've got some funds from last year
Okay.
to September 30th.
Any other questions for Tracy? All right, let's move on to B.
Okay. Hand these out real quick. Oh. So as you guys all know, we're working on our 2021 budget. Did you want to peek at it, Mary?
Oh, by the way, Tracy told me that there was an extra page included in the information that I sent out that had nothing to do with this. So just delete that page out of your packet.
So this is the 2021 budget that we put together. That goes over the EMPG, the nuke plant reimbursement, or the nuke plant. I've got Sarah, or which is also referred to as EPGRA. Clean Sweep program, that is a grant I apply for every year. Doesn't mean I'll get it. The hazmat materials emergency planning, that just depends on whether or not I apply for it. So that revenue in there is just one of the latest, most, whatever grant I applied for, that's the number that's in there. The computer grant. Anyways, these are the different types of grants that our office has applied for in the past. So they're just put in here so they're in there in the event I apply for them. The other pages that were included is the rationale for the EPGRA, EMPG, and the Point Beach nuclear plant. And in each one, it kind of spells out how we are looking at spending that budget in each of those sections. Yep.
So like on the first page where you went from 600 to 6,000 on the office supplies, what's that about?
600 to 6,000.
About a third of the way down the first page.
Yep. I wonder which one I'm looking at.
I'm looking at just the last two columns, right? I'm sorry, I'm on the
Okay.
second page. Darn it all. No, it's on the second page, I'm sorry.
Okay, second page. So office supplies. Okay, what was thrown in there? Hang on. Let me look on my rationale. So with Point Beach, I get a total of, I've requested a total of $113,018 from them. And then with that, I do my best to allocate that monies out throughout the whole budget. I'd have to go back and look and see what was all under miscellaneous. Let me see, we got office supplies, badge, outreach, PRDs. I can get back to you on that, Doc.
Please, yes, okay. And the other ones, there's a few in here, I skimmed through just quick, there's about five, maybe that are significantly different than the previous year. Can you send a rationale for those?
You do have these sheets in yours?
Oh, okay, we didn't get those before, did we? That was not sent out previous.
Not for 2021. This is the first time you're seeing it.
Okay, would those be explained in here, you think?
Should be. It may not spell out why it is that way, but if you have a particular question, one thing I can point out is under the EPGRA or the SARA funds, you're going to notice that salary is included for myself, whereas in prior years it wasn't.
Yep.
And that reasoning is because I spend time on Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act as well. And in the past, I never charged any of my salary to that. We would just basically look at what we were supposed to get reimbursed and only charge that amount to this in that budget. It's been pointed out to us by the state that if we show them exactly what we're spending instead of just what we're allocated, then when the state goes to request more monies due to the work we're putting in, they're not seeing that additional work or expenses that are being put in. So even though it's showing more under EPCRA, overall, I have budgeted that out between the three different
Okay.
categories.
Okay.
Any other questions for him? Dane Stoke, you caught it. Review upcoming training exercises. Any?
We don't have anything that is coming up. I do want to mention that on August 20th, when we had the reception center exercise, that went very good. We had the fire department that does the setup outside for the reception center. We looked over the layout at the school, and we're going to be looking at revising the map that we had been using. Also, in October, we're going to be doing fire drills for all of the county offices. So that is the only exercise we've got coming up.
Okay.
Update on sirens, no update. I do want to mention that I have pointed out to Point Beach, they are doing some siren maintenance here the end of this month. And they do the maintenance on the emergency planning zone sirens, which is 1 through 18. And then there's 19, anyways, there's 5 other ones that they say they don't own, but they are paying for the maintenance on those. So the other 5 that they don't own for sure are not being maintenance this year.
Okay.
So again, there's just a little bit of confusion as to why they're paying for maintenance on those sirens. Brief on COVID-19, so there's no change in what our office has been doing. The only thing I wanted to bring up is that down in Oshkosh, they have opened up a regional testing site, which is open for anyone, and that has no end date at this point in time.
Okay.
Clean Sweep 2020, I don't have my final numbers on that, but we held that on the 26th. Went very well. We had about 113 people that came through. Almost everybody that registered did come through. Chase sent out emails shortly before the Clean Sweep just to remind individuals of the time that they had signed up for, and that was manually done. We don't have that set up with the program that we use for people to register. And then, so we had about 60 some people sign up, so about 60 some people just show up.
Oh, on the clean sweep, how did that compare to say the last 2 years as far as attendance?
So for attendance, last year we had a poor attendance because it was a different location. We had it at the transfer station. And individuals that see it on 54 due to the sign that we put up about a week prior weren't seeing the sign when they came in on C. So just that additional viewage on Highway 54 really helped.
Mm-hmm.
And then the year before then, it's a little bit down from 2 years ago. And this year we held it on a Wednesday instead of the typical Saturday.
Yeah.
But that was what I was left to choose with because we had it first selected in May on a Saturday. And then due to COVID, I had to postpone it. And with this later date, I had to fit in where we could because everyone else had already picked Saturdays and Fridays.
Sure. Okay.
2021, I've already gotten an email that is open for a grant application, and that is due before the end of this month for the application to see if we can
Okay.
get it.
Have you penciled a date in yet for it?
No, I'm meeting with the Clean Sweep group next week to kind of look at discussing a date.
Okay.
So, but even if we give a preliminary date, that doesn't mean that the grant has been approved. It's a very competitive grant.
Okay.
So,
Did you see because we saw a lot of people showing up this year, bringing in their stuff. Was there any in the ditches this year that you noticed? or that you heard of?
You typically get the, the amount of, we haven't heard a lot about tires. Not traditionally like compared to the past. We've had couches, but this year actually, it's been
So far?
relatively quiet. When we look at the dumping complaints that we've had, last year was horrible. But so far this year, it really seemed to have maybe tapered off a bit. People got the word that it's really not that expensive to go to the transfer station. But that first year of transition, we definitely saw it, but not so much in 2020.
Okay.
And plus, too, with some of the things that we don't take, we've been telling people where they can take it, giving them phone numbers and other routes to go to.
Okay.
Do we get a grant typically every year, or are we paying, how else we pay for it if we don't get the grant?
Well, if we don't get a grant, then I have to ask the county board whether or not they will allow that to be held, because then that comes out of county funds.
And have we typically gotten a grant?
The past 5 years, we have gotten a grant.
Okay.
But there was a number of years prior to that. I think it was a number of years there wasn't one held.
Okay. Batteries?
So as you guys know, we did receive a donation from Duracell of AA, AAA, C, D, and 9-volt batteries. Our office worked with getting them all out to the emergency responders. Then we went to the department heads, and then we went to municipalities and school districts. So we have been getting batteries out to individuals on that. We do have AA's left. And what I'm going to do is in a few months reach back out to all these entities and see where they're at if they would like some more AA. Sanitizer, we had the two 55-gallon drums. All of those were put into smaller bottles with the help of Boy Scouts. And we have been reaching out to county offices to find out their hand sanitizer needs and getting them out that way. So that's it.
Okay. Any other questions go ahead, Scott?
Maybe this isn't for Tracy, but how did the small appliance recycling go at the fairgrounds?
You'd have to ask somebody else.
Okay.
I did attend it myself, and there wasn't a whole lot of people. I did hear from another individual. I think that electronic collection was supposed to go till 2, but when someone had gone into the fairgrounds right around that time, they didn't even know where it was being held. They don't know if it was done for the day, or there was not a lot of signage or even a lot of entities set up to receive stuff. So there was one truck there to take stuff when I went. So
Okay. Who handled that one?
the name of Dan Porth was in a Facebook message, or not message, but Facebook post. And the Village of Luxembourg was the one that I'd seen it on their page that they were advertising it. So I'm not sure who really was handling that.
Okay.
So
How do they make money on it?
that I don't know. Well, they were charging, for people to bring in certain electronics. Based on the size of a TV, they would charge you X amount of dollars. I've seen, up to $80. Fire extinguishers they were taking, I think it was $10 a fire extinguisher. I don't know if that's how they help cover some of their costs.
Okay. All right.
I did one more thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Our office had gotten an email in regards to some thermometers and pulse oximeters. That was probably available to our first responders. That went out to them as well as to some of the schools here in Kewaunee County. And I do know that our emergency first responders and a number of schools will hopefully be getting some thermometers and pulse oximeters.
Okay. Any other questions for Tracy? All right. Moving on. Matt.
All right, well, we'll start off with the 2020. I just handed out a packet that's actually the 2021 budget worksheet, but it has the 2020 both year-to-date as well as year-end actual. So I think it's a good basis for the discussion. So going down through there, probably some of the main highlights, of course, are the janitorial. Those have all been marked for COVID, so that'll all get reimbursed through a county fund from the state, I believe, state or federal government. So we've been marking as many of those related costs into COVID. Overtime, if you stay on the first sheet, on the sheriff's side overtime, a little bit, if we look at the year-end estimated, For year to date, we're at around 26, and that was going back to July, was when this was all worked off of. So we see that we're going to be a little high, and for those that were at the finance meeting last Friday, when we sat in with the auditors, they said the same thing, you know, that we had the slight overtime increase, but a lot of that was the officer involved shooting last fall. That you know equates to a lot of overtime when it comes to administrative leaves and the like. And then we had a couple FMLA issues. But as far as overtime on the jail side, they're doing a remarkable job keeping that low, as well as on patrol. When you look at everything that we've been, you know, everything that's been thrown at us. But really, nothing that stands out as we go through the 2020 budget year to date, and even looking at Paul's review of it towards the year end, it looks like we are going to come in under budget. So there really is anything that really spiked up that really raises an alarm. So everything's pretty much tracking as it would in years past. The big thing are COVID-related costs, and then some slight overtime spikes because of that incident last fall.
I just add, Matt,
Yep.
with the overtime also, you gotta look at, click it or ticket. We're receiving $8,000 revenue for that. Also, $6,000 for the drug grant. So that'll drop down 14,000 of that total right now. So we're in good shape with the overtime.
Your sheriff's fees and traffic patrol fees are down pretty significantly. How are you offsetting that?
So what's going to offset that in the overall budget is going to be the decrease in fuel costs, border prisoners. We've got a lot of things that have really gone that are way under budget
Okay.
because of it. So yeah, we've seen some things that we haven't seen the revenue in, but then on the expense side, we've also seen some occurrences which
reduction.
are keeping those costs down.
So I noticed like on your, for the sheriff fees, you've actually shown a lower amount for next year than you had been budgeting, or like for this year?
For 2021, we adjusted that down, correct? So we brought that down to 25 versus the 30.
Any reason for that?
Just, you know, tracking that forward. So I mean, we could be pleasantly surprised and they'll shoot
Okay.
right back up to years past, but we do have to use, you know, the past as an indicator. So we're just
Okay.
sort of hedging our bets there and keeping it cautious.
Okay.
So again, in regards to the 2020 year to date, you know, we're looking fairly solid as we go into these next, probably looking at November's meeting, then I'll come in with a budget transfer sheet request where I'll, you know, lay all that out as far as where we've been under, where we've been over, and have all that realigned. But again, in listening to the auditor as well as Paul, coming out of 2020, it looks like we're going to be under budget, but, you know, in the total. So that's the good news for 2020.
Okay, any other questions for Matt? Okay. Overtime.
I'm going to turn that over to Chief Deputy Cornelius.
Okay, guys, I just handed out the form. I don't know if Doug, if you got a copy of it. But again, no leaps and bounds. Again, the open shifts, they're still under our average, and they continue to go down every year. Holiday, again, that's driven by the union contract. Again, we just had another holiday event, which will kick up the holiday hours of overtime. Training, we just had active shooter training, and that's already budgeted for the year, so that will come out of that item. And again, the saturation patrol, 154 hours, that's 100% paid by the state of Wisconsin, click it or ticket. That's looking at around $8,000 to $9,000 reimbursement. Everything else is pretty static, about the same, so.
Okay. We really don't have any update on the facility improvement study, because
Well,
that's
I'm gonna hand
next
out
week,
what
huh?
we just presented, so for those that have the desire to know, so this was sent out for our upcoming meeting. So this is the packet, just I guess for awareness. It has the agenda coming up for September 14th, as well as the basic slides. This came from Administrator Feld. So it looks like he kind of carved out from the last presentation to focus or create some focus on what we're going to discuss at that meeting. So I wanted to provide it to everybody in case you had any questions, but there is a meeting on September 14th where we will be kicking off that initiative once again. And just the other thing that I'll bring up, that committee again has been reconstituted. I believe that was at the August meeting? I think that was our last meeting. So Dan Olson, Mr. Doak Baker, Gary Poppy, Mr. Massler, Mr. Dell, Mr. Feld, myself, Lieutenant Ben Aram, Jeff Wasnicki, Mr. Widener, the jail inspector Nancy Phelan, John Kane, Jeff Dorner, John Pavich, and the new mayor Jason Jelinek. I'll also, of course, be including Lieutenant Jason Baser that I'll be bringing from command staff and Chief Deputy Criminal. So I'll kind of round it out. But that's the listing. So as far as new members, we've got the new mayor for the city of Kewaunee, and then Mr. Bob Widener was also put on as a citizen member now. So just as an awareness.
Okay, any questions for Matt? All right. Staffing update.
All right. So as of walking into this meeting, we've got two big things that are coming up. Of course, from the last meeting, we all know that Chief Deputy Cornelius will be retiring, and so there was approved to post that that job posting. Also on, I believe it's the September 14th executive meeting, they will be authorizing that, so we'll move forward with the posting for the Chief Deputy position. And then as well as the eligibility list, because those are the two big things. We want to start off with the Chief Deputy posting, and then you're going to have a cascading of different vacancies and fillings throughout the department, but ultimately what it will result in is a new position. So we want to get going on that eligibility list. So once we get done realigning everybody into new spots, the net result will be one new position at the tail end. So we just want to have that work going on, so we're not dealing with that at the end of it all and end up 2-3 months behind the 8 ball like we used to be. So we just want to stay ahead of it. We've exhausted our existing eligibility list. So we always like to keep a current eligibility list in case we get people that, leave for any reason. So as of walking this meeting, like 10 minutes before I walked in, I got an email from Scott that we will be going ahead with the eligibility posting. So that should probably be up before the end of the week, and we'll get going on that.
Okay.
So as far as other staffing, we've got our two newest are working along greatly. Haley and Marcus are doing a remarkable job through their training scenario, so we're looking forward to getting them online. As far as we still have one that is deployed, so we have a gap there that we're filling in as best we can. But what else do we have? I'm trying to think of the eligibility list.
We have a FMLA issue that's coming up. It could be a short period of time or substantial, but that just was hit between our eyes last week. So we'll be looking at that, and we'll know more about that within the next day or so. That won't cause a whole lot of overtime.
Okay. Do you want to address that part-time employment side work? We had it on again this
Yeah,
week.
that was on it, but that was actually addressed at the last one, and I believe there was just some revisions from full council. They made a few revisions, and that actually made its way through executive. So that was just sort of an awareness for this committee. I know you guys have pretty much approved it just with some tweaks from Mr. Wasnicki. So those adjustments have been made, and it's been going through the channels.
Okay. And you pretty much adjusted the proposed budget at the beginning here, correct?
Well, I guess I'd like to go over just a little bit to go over a little bit more in detail. I won't spend a lot of
All right.
time. There weren't a lot of changes. We went through this budget. We look back. 2020 is as far as year-to-date actual. It's hard to go off that because it has been such a strange year. So what we basically did is backed it up to 2019 year-to-dates and use those as a better gauge because once we get through what we're going through, 2021 will hopefully fall right back into track. So that being said, we really didn't adjust a lot of anything on expense or revenue. We kept everything the same going back. So even though our year-to-date or year end for 2020 may be off because of what we're going through, by 2021, we're hoping to fall right back into lines. We left the majority of it the same, dropped a couple. There's probably more decreases than anything when we look at it on the expense side. And the main ones were our Board of Prisoners. If we go back, really nothing on the first page. I think the first page is pretty much status quo all the way through. We left everything solid. But when we get into the next page, we dropped down our fuel just by 2,000. The outlay is a whole other discussion we could have once we get down to outlay. So that was there's a substantial increase because of some equipment that is end of life. Water and sewer we had to bump up by 1,000. So we're looking at very minor adjustments. When we look at going down, if you go to that next page under Board of Prisoners, the board of, I'm sorry, if you go up to maintenance agreements went from 58 down to 40. Now, part of that is that a lot of those monies were kept in there when we transitioned to the new radio system where we used to pay a monthly maintenance fee. We kind of left that alone to see how our costs would go. Well, now since that, the radio towers have been removed from our budget and our responsibility over to emergency management, they pulled that down from 58 down to 40. So that, again, that number may, although it's lower here, that may reappear in another part of your overall county budget because those were monies that were allocated towards maintenance in regards to that, that radio system. Also in Board of Prisoners Adult, we dropped from 75 down to 70. Board of Prisoners Juvenile, we dropped 1,000 from 5 down to 4. Those are significant ones as far as reducing it. So to the question about, you know, where we're holding firm, again, 2020, our Board of Prisoners is much lower, but we're going to see once the courts reopen, once probation and parole really becomes active again, we're going to see those numbers climb right back to where they were. But we're still confident that we can, you know, reduce that budgeted amount by a couple thousand.
Okay.
So the big one is when you go back to outlay. So we go back to the actual outlay sheet. That's the significant one where we talk about the radios. So we've had those radios for about a decade. We received an end-of-life notice about 2 years ago. And what that means is basically our service providers for both the mobile radios and the squads and the portables have said, we don't offer any parts for them. We can't fix them. Don't even send them in. So we're really just kind of limping here for the last 2 years on end-of-life equipment. And so we did put that into the multi-year capital outlay plan. And so we do have to make a commitment to get those updated. So that's a significant one for doing that upgrade. And again, that's under the outlay for radios portables and radios mobile. Now another one, and I believe you have the one where there's some side letters, you know, the administrators proposed. Under the SWAT team equipment, and that actually goes beyond just SWAT team, that's for all patrol, is some body armor equipment. So that's some helmets. We've gotten some donations from the plant in the past. We have gotten a commitment that they're going to donate $5,000 to us for that equipment. So that $10,000 that was placed in there was removed tentatively. And so when we sit down with the finance director and the county administrator, we're going to advocate to at least try to put in the other $5,000. If the nuclear plant will give us $5,000, to have that other $5,000 so we could upgrade that armor equipment, the helmets and the plates and so on. So that's the one thing that still has to be worked out. As well as under squad cars, I put in the $25,000 per squad based off of what I had from last year. Just got an email over the weekend after this was printed, and the actual cost for the Chargers, which is the cheapest version we can get of any of the squads, is going to be the all-wheel drive Charger without the Hemi. So it's going to be the V6 moving forward. That's just the only thing they offer, those all-wheel drives, and it would be silly not to have all-wheel drives. I'd rather go to a 6-cylinder with an all-wheel drive than a rear-wheel drive with a Hemi, you know, as far as being able to get around. So the actual quote that he has from the state is $26,842. So I will probably be adjusting that with the finance director from just 25 flat up to that $26,842 for those squads. So that's the most current pricing I've got.
Are any of these on the, on your capital outlay not in that 5-year capital plan?
No, pretty much everything is in that 5-year. And there's a few things that fall in and fall out, such as like computers, MDCs. But I mean, the way we rotate with the fleet, because we've got that 12-car fleet of MARP, we pretty much every year just kind of maintain a sustaining. Because if we look at, let's say, the computers, the in-squad computers, if we do 4 a year or 3 a year, by the time you get through the fleet, you're almost back revisiting again and starting over.
Okay.
Yeah, so it becomes a cycle, but that's the best way to lessen the impact on the budgets.
Anything else?
Yeah, no, nothing else as far as any real standouts to the 2021. So we're doing our best to keep it as flat as we can. There's a few things that, you know, we do have to increase, and that those radio purchases are the big ones.
What's going on at the jail, the 14,000?
And outlay?
Yeah.
We will have to look at, I believe, cameras. That's going to be your closed circuit TV or CCTV cameras. That's another thing that was addressed last year, was that we had let those go way too long, and the concerns were coming more from the judge's side than from us, where we have the responsibility and the monitoring of not just our jail cameras, but the courthouse. So equipment in the jail has to be updated to marry up with those court cameras.
Okay.
So that's just to maintain the quality of imaging. They did some last year already, and so we just want to carry that forward.
Okay.
So that's actually more of a maintenance thing than a sheriff's department thing, because those camera systems overlap. So it's really more of a courthouse security thing, but again, because we monitor them, some of those costs come into the jail.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt? Scott?
Was there a lot of training missed this year because of COVID?
Actually, no. We did some very creative stuff. We just did last week, 2 weeks ago, right before I left, for active shooters. We actually did them this year in the churches. So we went around the county, asked permission, and were granted permission to go into some of the houses of worship, and just did some active shooter training in regards to that. We've had to tweak it a little bit, having to wear masks, of course, having to limit the numbers, but the training really hasn't slid. I mean, we have to keep it up. So where we can do it outside, whether it's at the ranges, but when we have to do it inside, we have to just go by the precautions, but we can't allow for the training to slip. But that's probably the biggest change was this last one with the houses of worship, and they had planned that for quite some time, and it went off pretty good. And so each year, I mean, there's certain ones that are required. So we also did EVOC, so emergency vehicle operations out at the fairgrounds this year. We typically would do it at the Luxembourg Sports Complex, but they weren't available because of construction, so then we did it over at the fairgrounds. So we utilized some of those frontage roads and the different roads going to and from the barns, and set up a course and did some EVOC there. So that one was handled very well. Again, with officers getting in and out of different squads, we had to have some wipes along and different things to take precautions. But yeah, we can't freeze. We can't not do it. So we just got to adjust and overcome and make some practices where they didn't exist before to make sure nobody gets sick. But knock on wood, everybody's still healthy by us.
Okay.
And then as far as like the body cameras, if that's ever available from the feds or whatever, would you be interested in it? I know it's a lot of data management after, but
If it was something, the only way that I would really look at seriously if it came with resources, or if they were a mandate, say you have to equip every one of your officers with body cams, and it didn't come with some sort of resource, I don't know how we would do it. Not just from the expense of the equipment itself, but as you mentioned, the data storage. We're going to have to come up with a policy and ordinance in regards to retention. How long do you hold? What do we hold? How do you redact it? There's a lot of things that need to be worked out, and I know you're seeing more and more of a push for it. And again, if that comes out from the Department of Justice, that's great, but it will have to come with some resources. And we're not the only ones that way. Most sheriffs and police departments have said the same thing, because those who have gone with it on their own dime, it's crushing. It's absolutely crushing to the budget. And we do have squad cameras. So in our incidents thus far, we've been very fortunate that our squad cameras have captured some really good footage that has assisted not only in the investigation, but of course as well as the officer as well. But that's the big ticket item, is going to be the expense of data retention. So I'm open to it, but we've got to make sure that it doesn't break the budget.
right.
Does on your squads, do you track your squads?
Yes, we have GPS on all the squads. We're also including what's called the MOC system. It's a state system that we have right in dispatch. So at any time, whether it's the state patrol or our squads, anybody that's on the MOC, it's an abbreviation, mobile automated, whatever it is for actually locating the vehicles. So we can track wherever they are. So if there's a call that comes out, we know where our squads are, and then we typically know, oh, hey, there's a state patrol that might be in the area. Let's request their assistance as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
those squads are GPS marked at any given time, and we can go back and actually create a map of where they traveled, during their 12-hour shift. So it's high accountability.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt? All right. Liaison agreement.
You want to take that, Dave?
Sure. At our last meeting, we talked about what happens if we start a school year and all of a sudden we shut down abruptly. And I met with Mr. Wisnicki immediately the next day, and he put together this slide letter. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read it or not.
I've got it. Yeah.
What he's basically saying here in this slide letter is that, number one, the school will pay a full portion. That's if the full school year goes through. If it's 112,000, they'll pay the whole thing. And the second item, it's saying that once the school shuts down, if it's the first week, second week, or whatever, they're gonna pay at minimum half of it. And then when we do our virtual training in the third section and beyond, they would be responsible for the hours that the school liaison officer would work those. So let's say they get into week 75% of the school year, they'd end up paying 75%. But if we use virtual school liaison officers, they'd be billed hourly for that. So it's a good letter. I have not met with the school, but Mr. Schlender was very good about meeting with me and talking to me on the phone about putting this together. So I don't see a problem with this. And again, we're going to introduce this once you guys had a chance to review this to the school, to have them review and get back to us and tweak it out the way they see it or keep it as is. So we should have an answer here by Friday.
I guess I'm not clear. It looks like you asked for being paid just a flat half of what the remaining period cost would be in the letter. But then you talk about billing out for these other virtual services. Is that
Right.
in addition to the 50%?
Yes.
Because I don't see that in here.
Well,
It says it's billed out.
again, I questioned with Nikki on that, and he says, no, it clearly states that. And I'm like, well, it does it? So,
No, when I read this, I thought, well, it seems rather fair. I mean, for that 50%, you get some more limited services.
right.
I don't know I don't know how they're gonna react to that, to be both billed 50% for just a flat fee and then also hourly for the
Well, and again,
services, which might be, I would assume they were covered by that 50%.
well, again, this is, let's say we hit week 3 and they shut it down. They'd be on the hook for 50%. But we also are talking to school about having Nia and Dana available throughout the rest of the school year, because these kids will be virtually,
Yeah.
instructed. And on the, like, section 3 and beyond, it'll explain their duties will be. So again, if they put in 20 hours a week, they're gonna be billed at 20 hours beyond the 20 or 50%. Because that's only fair for us. We have to make something off this revenue source. So again, it's a contract that we'll try to put into place.
Oh, I would read it differently, so I don't know that the wording is not very clear there.
Well, that was a debate last time too.
And I mean, once this gets proposed to the school board, I'm sure that they may come back with the same question.
Yeah, I wouldn't even ask that question if, it's like, you're paying 50%. This is the way when I first read it was, okay, you're paying for 50%. For that 50%, this is what you get, these services.
That's the way I read it.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't even ask the question until I got that first bill, and it's, oh, wait, what are you talking about double billing me for the
Yeah,
services? I thought the 50% covered those.
right. And I think we have to
We gotta be a
hammer
lot
out number
clearer.
2 a little bit more. And Jeff, him and Scott talked about it. Scott brought up the same things, and Scott said, okay, I see where you're going with it. See what they have to say, and then we'll get back.
Okay,
But yeah, that number 2 is not as clear as glass.
no.
Okay, any other questions? It's listed with possible action. How do you guys want to handle it?
I'd like to see it reworded so it's clearer.
I don't think it isn't an issue that we have to pass it today, but you bring up a valid point, though, because in fact that it is kind of murky as far as the wording goes. Let's maybe send that one back and define that a little bit.
I think at our next meeting, we can have the full package ready to roll. The school will have a chance to look at it. At that point, we'll also have our back and forth conversation, how we think it should be and they should. So we'll have something here that's a little bit more, I'm more concerned about number 2 than anything.
Or it
Okay.
could be the description of services at the end, say these will be billed out at this rate or whatever,
Right.
Basically, how
I like
2
that.
relates to number 3.
That's what's unclear, exactly.
Yeah, I like that. We'll have an answer.
All right. Okay. Next meeting date is 14th here in Kewaunee again. Proposed at the beginning of the meeting, I said we'd change that to the 11th for Tracy.
Selfish people.
The next one is October 14th, though?
Correct. Uh, as far as, travel requests, anything? No? Okay.
Did we set a date for November yet then?
November would be the 11th.
Okay, we did.
The, yeah, 11th is good because I'll be back the 10th.
And those will all still be here?
Yes.
So we'll get our packet the night before?
No, we'll get the packet. You got me. No, that'll be, you're gonna actually get it probably on Monday, the first Monday of November, because I'm leaving on Tuesday morning. Pardon? Yeah, you're gonna, Matt, you and Tracy both for the November meeting will have to, probably the last week of October, we'll all touch base, okay? The, for the chief deputy's, position, I don't know if any of you new guys have the, chief deputy's duties, but we should include that in the, so, so that the committee members all know what it is chief deputy does.
That's actually, when we post for it, that's included right with it. So you have a posting, any job that we have, we automatically put the posting with the job description. So that's all completely laid out. So when
Okay.
you go ahead, so probably at that executive committee, when they go to approve it, we'll have both the revised. The bigger trick is the posting, because there hasn't been a posting for like, how many years?
18.
18. So this will be the first posting in 18 years. So that's going to be the bigger challenge, is just, the wage scale and so on. The job position, we just revisited a few years ago, made sure that was
Right.
updated. So we'll just marry those two together, and that's what we'll put forth for approval.
Okay.
Is
Oh.
the plan to promote from within?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other matters that bring forward? You're pretty quiet back there, Doug.
Speak.
Okay. If there's no other things to bring forward, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to
Doug?
adjourn.
Doug. All right. Meeting adjourned, 9:03.